Hello and welcome back to Running the Table. I am here with Tim with more football content. We are going to be continuing our coverage of the NFL draft up until draft day. Our last video was covering the quarterbacks, and we're going to stick with a positional theme, and we're going to move on to the running backs. Although they're not exciting as quarterbacks, there's still a lot to cover here. Tim, you got any thoughts before we get going?
Not particular. I mean, I know when we're looking at this, we see this as a pretty particular top three, and then there's a decent amount of other guys that kind of swim into the rest of the field. But we definitely still got some promising guys coming out of this running back group. But I know even in like the mock draft, we didn't see any of these guys coming out of the first round. It's very possible that one of them might, but we see a lot of these guys as probably early second round guys.
Yeah, and the thing for me is taking a running back in the first round. That's not because of like talent level. That's just a personal preference. I think needs are higher, and in terms of like running backs, every team kind of has their guy or their committee that they go with. But I think it's definitely possible that like one of the top two could slip into the first round. So
Oh, for sure, absolutely.
yeah. So
They could go, I feel like, anywhere between like 24 and early second round, but it all depends on what teams decide to go with, and we'll talk about some of that with these different guys when we get into them.
Yeah. So Tim, you ready to run it?
Let's run it.
All right. So the first running back we have on the list is Alabama's Najee Harris. Now, Najee Harris is a guy that's on top of my list. Tim, I know you have him at 2. But the thing is, Najee Harris has appeared at the top of a lot of draft rankings in terms of running backs. And it's very clear why. I mean, he was up there in the Heisman rankings last year. He's 6'2", 230 pounds. He's a big power back. He's got really great vision, and he's a very patient runner. He kind of reminds me of like a Le'Veon Bell. Like he kind of waits for the hole.
Yep.
But like for a bigger back, he has really good speed and great quickness. He has an ability to finish runs well, and he's really kind of like what I'd like to call an air back, where you could use him both on the ground and the air. And just a natural athlete like that, it is very much not wrong to say he's the best running back in this class.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and he can, in a lot of cases, be considered the best running back in this class. I personally I think Etienne barely edges him out, but they're a very even 1 and 2. With this guy, the biggest thing I noticed, and you brought it up, is his patience. But he has incredible patience to not only find the hole, but with his athleticism and size, he then has the power and speed to burst through the hole or just plow through whoever's trying to plug that hole. So he's very patient. That's going to work out well for him in the league. He's not necessarily the kind of like Derrick Henry type talent that you've seen.
No,
coming
he's
out
not
of
like
Alabama
a guy. He's not that big. He's not like a
but
human
he has
ball.
But he still has incredible upside, and I love his versatility. He's proven that he can do everything well on the ground as well as the passing game. And the biggest thing for me, he's proven he can get around you, he can go through you, and he can even go over the top of you, because we've seen on multiple occasions his ability to go up and over defenders, which I think is very unusual for a back of his size.
Yeah, the dude's a straight up athlete. And Tim, like you said, the ability to go around, over, and through. I mean, the real big plus for me here is versatility. In a running back, for me, I want running backs that can do more than one thing. I mean, it's awesome because, like, granted, I'm just going to compare this to my Packers. You got A.J. Dillon, who's a big old power back, but it's also great to have Aaron Jones there who can run through guys, but he's also amazing out of the backfield.
He's great in the passing game, yeah.
And Najee Harris has both of those tools. So I really like Najee Harris, and he tops my list.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no fault in you doing that, because he's got all around talent all across the board. So it's hard to argue against Najee Harris and his talent.
Yeah, 100%. But it's also not hard to argue the running back that you have the top of your list, Travis Etienne out of Clemson. And Travis Etienne is second on my list. And honestly, it's not even a 1 and 2 thing. It's a 1A and a 1B thing, because these guys are so interchangeable at the top of lists. I've seen lists where, like yours, where Etienne's at the top, or lists like mine where Harris is at the top. But I really like a lot of what Etienne has to bring to the table. He's not a very big power back like Najee Harris is, but the thing that stands out about Travis Etienne is his home run speed and acceleration. Once he hits that hole, he is gone and he can fly. He is dangerous in the open field. He can make you miss, juke moves left and right. And the thing about him, like going into last year, the main thing that he needed to improve on was his pass catching ability. That is also improved in the 2020.
He improved on it. Yeah.
And he made a significant jump in that too. So he's another all-around back that can do a little bit of both, hit you on the ground and on the air.
Absolutely. And what I really like about him is you talked about that, like, I'd say he's got that 4.4 speed to break through holes. But the one thing I really like that I've seen about him is his ability to turn the corner on guys. If you let him get to the outside, he's going to get that step on you. And like you said, you get him in the open field, he's gone. If you let him get to that secondary untouched, that's going to be a real problem for you because he's going to see guys in front of him and he knows how to get around guys.
Well, he 100% has the ability to have that athleticism and acceleration and break through the hole and get to the second and third level untouched. I mean, granted, Clemson had a really good offensive line, but that's not to downplay Etienne's athletic ability. I mean, you could say the same thing about Najee Harris. Alabama's offensive line was
incredible. Both offensive lines
well.
have
both exceptional talent. Offensive lines.
Yeah.
But for both Harris and Etienne, the talent is abundant and the talent is clear. And that is why they are 1A and 1B. It's really hard to delineate if there's a clear number one back. I like Etienne just as much as I like Najee Harris, but for purpose of rankings, because I have to choose, I prefer Harris. But I've watched a lot of Etienne. I absolutely love what Etienne has to bring to the table also. It would not shock me if he was the first running back taken.
Yeah, absolutely. These guys are just so close. The only thing that I think is a slight bit of a concern for Etienne that has shown not so much for Harris was his ball security. Etienne has struggled a little bit at times with fumbling the ball, but I think he has improved on it as he's gotten older, gotten more experience. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing to watch at the next level, as well as the fact that what's going to be interesting for both of these guys, but especially for Etienne, is going to be how he helps the pass blocking game. That's a big part of the game in the NFL with running backs is how well can you pick up a blitz.
Well, Tim, the thing is with Etienne's athleticism and agility and speed and acceleration and how well he can catch the ball, why in the world would you have him block when he's such a weapon to catch?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. And it all depends on how the system uses him, whether or not they want to use him as decoys on pass play, of whether or not he breaks off. If a play gets busted, he may break off for a little screen. There's possibility that he may have to come in there once in a while and toss a block. But yeah, you're right that he's not going to be, like, most likely on any team, like, their premier pass blocking running back. But when you see about some of the best running backs in the league, for instance, I'd like to use Ezekiel Elliott as an example. When you get to be like the top running back on a team, there's a lot of times you're going to be out there for enough downs that they're going to keep you out there for passing downs where you're going to have to help protect your quarterback. And how well you're going to do that is going to be a big difference on whether or not you become a premier playmaker at the next level.
Right. So the next running back we're going to get into is North Carolina's Devonte Williams. And I like Devonte Williams a lot. And I saw him firsthand, the premier game that really opened my eyes. And I was like, whoa, this kid is a stud, is the game against my Miami Hurricanes, where he bursted on the scene for like 220 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the thing that stood out to me about Devonte Williams is you can't bring him down. He bounces off tackles.
Human pinball machine.
Oh, he's a huge pinball machine. He bounces off tacklers, makes people miss. He has exceptional balance, which further helps him stay up and break tackles. And he's always falling forward, and he's a very high effort player. Like he has a really long motor that can last a while. And he has the tools to be just as good as Etienne and Harris.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's not a huge guy. He's only that 5'10", 220, but he's very stout, and his center of gravity is low, and that helps you when it comes to that hit sticking, that staying on your feet. And like you said, he's incredible. He's showed that he's got real talent when it comes to not being taken down.
Well,
he bounces off guys left and right.
And I mean, and as I was doing research, an NFL comp that I saw to Devonte Williams that I really was like, you know what, you got a point. Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty true. And the only one difference that I would say in his game is I don't think that Williams has been used as much in the pass game as Kamara. That's one
Well,
of the
just
things
in terms of like being a
but
runner, though.
build and runner and their style, absolutely. One of the other guys that I can see comparing him to a little bit, um, he honestly he might be a little bit more shifty than this NFL comparison, but Austin Eckler. I see a lot of that small, stout build, can fight off tacklers, but also has the agility to make plays with the guy in front of him. And I think if he's able to improve in the passing game a little bit, he could have a very similar role to both of those guys in the NFL. He's got to be able to prove himself at the next level that he can handle those bigger, stronger, faster defenders.
Well, Tim, you mentioned for Etienne how important being a pass blocking back is. This is something that Javonte Williams can do because
Absolutely.
North Carolina last year employed two running backs. They employed Javonte Williams and Michael Carter to split carries. And when Michael Carter was on the field, Javonte Williams, a lot of the time, was sticking his nose in there and being a good blocker to open up holes. And that is something that he 100% can do and something that sets him apart.
Yeah, coaches and scouts at the next level will love that because he's proven that he's willing to step up to the challenge, do what he has to do to keep those guys away from his QB. And that's huge at the next level. I think that experience of his is going to prove well. And honestly, he absolutely has the size and build to be able to do that. If he's got that fearlessness to go take out those blitzing linebackers at the knees, he's going to be able to stop a lot of guys from busting up that pocket.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so those are like the main top three running backs that we've really seen. It's Harris, Etienne, and Williams. And then there's just kind of like the other guys. But that's not to say that there isn't a lot of talent within the other guys. And within those other guys, we're going to pick out a couple that we really like that stood out to us. And we're going to quickly go through them. Now, the first one that I briefly mentioned earlier was Javonte Williams' backfield mate, Michael Carter. And Michael Carter was the smaller back in terms of the two at UNC. And I can see him as he's a well-rounded smaller back with good athleticism. He's athletic and he can really fill in for teams as a third down running back with good receiving ability. And that's kind of what I see Michael Carter as.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He was much more of the receiver out of that duo, and he's proven that he was very good as a receiver. At 5'8", 202, he's got the ability to just sneak out of the backfield there, find little holes just to be drop down options for your QB on that third down or even like second down, need to get a couple of yards. I feel like they can really use teams can really look to use him as that kind of like garbage yards. If stuff breaks down and you need to get a couple of yards, he's going to be there hiding somewhere in the flats or in the center of that field underneath the linebackers to be able to get a couple of yards out of there. And he has great hands for a running back, and I think that's where he's going to make his money at the next level.
Yeah. So Tim, who's another like lesser known guy that you really like?
One of the guys that I came across that I think he really got forgotten a little bit in this year because he chose to take the year off was Kenneth Gainwell from Memphis. He's a guy that he took a step back in 2020 because he lost 4 members of his family to COVID. But I think he's a really good pass catching back that's coming out of this draft. That's really where he's gonna make his money. And he's proven that he's got great speed. And I think that he's going to be able to handle a lot of pass catching duties at the next level. One of the guys that I would compare him to is almost like a Jeff Wilson for the 49ers. He's got speed. He's got pass catching. He's not going to be your most dynamic running back, but he's going to be able to come in, be a second or third running back on a lot of teams, and he can do damage in the passing game. I think he's going to be really shifty, and he can even push out into the slot if need be. Tim, I think he's going to be a really, really good all-around running back in the passing game that not a lot of teams are going to know what to deal with.
Agree with everything you said. I know you made the Austin Eckler comp to who?
to
Williams?
it was to Williams, yes.
Yeah. I think the Austin Eckler comp fits more appropriately here with Gainwell, because with Kenneth Gainwell, what I saw was he's an incredibly explosive running back.
Mhm.
But the thing that stands out for me, and you mentioned this, is his receiving ability. And he's probably the most efficient receiving running back in this draft. He's right up there with Najee Harris and Travis Etienne in terms of receiving ability. And he's a good enough runner to keep defenses honest,
Yeah,
that you can't just like pay attention to him as a receiving back.
yeah. You
You
can't
still got
bank
to
on
pay
him
attention
only
to his
going out
running
in the
ability.
pass game. Yeah.
So I really do see him like comparatively to like Austin Eckler. And I also really like Kenneth Gainwell.
Yeah, I think he's got the talent to make a real difference at the next level. I mean, his 2019 year, his last year playing, he averaged nearly 12 yards per reception. Obviously, making or reciprocating those numbers, replicating them rather, in the NFL is going to be much more difficult. But
It's
putting
not
him through,
impossible though.
oh, it's not impossible by any means, especially depending on his workload. But I think he's going to be a real shifty guy that's going to be able to sneak behind defenses next year.
Agreed. And another running back that really stood out to me outside of the top three was Ohio State's Trey Sermon. Now, Trey Sermon is a guy that had a turbulent college career. He started at Oklahoma, he transferred, he sat for a while at Ohio State. He had a chance to show out, and he did show out in the Big Ten
showed out in a
Conference
big way,
Championship
yeah.
game against Northwestern, where he absolutely went off for 300 plus yards. But then he got hurt in the national championship game. So for him, I guess the knock that availability has always kind of been a question mark, because he's taken the tough road to get to where he's at. But when I look at Trey Sermon, he's just a really good, well-rounded running back that can do a little bit of everything pretty well.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's going to serve him well heading into the next level. He's shown the ability that he can have an effect in all aspects of the game, and I think that's something that he can build on. He's not necessarily your most like talented guy at all of those aspects of the game, but he absolutely has the basis to be able to expand his game and work himself into a premier back in the NFL. It's going to require quite a lot of work, but I think he absolutely has the right build for it. He's about like a middle and 4.5 speed guy. And he's 6 foot 221. He's absolutely got the build to be able to shrug off guys left and right. Obviously, in the NFL, you're going to have a lot bigger defenders, but he's got the size, he's got the explosiveness to get through guys and become a very solid like first, second down running back, grind out some yards, head into like third down in the NFL. And I think that's absolutely what teams can bank on if they choose to draft him.
100%. I think he's going to be a really good later round draft pick. Now, Tim, we have time for about one more. So is there anybody that you want to highlight?
Not a whole lot of guys really stuck out in my mind other than that. The only one that I have seen before, and I think there are some things to talk about him, not only positive but also negatives, is Chuba Hubbard out of Oklahoma State. He actually made the decision to come back and play in this 2020 season, and that actually hurt his draft stock rather than helped.
Yeah.
He was originally considered to be a top running back of this class, but one of the things that's really brought him back is injury. He's gotten injured a couple of times, as well as the fact that his big issue last year, not only this year, something he hoped to improve on, but didn't really show a whole lot of improvement on, is he has a pretty decent fumble problem. But he's a guy that he's got very good speed. He's a tough runner. But he's got to clean some stuff up if he's going to be considered a solid back at the next level. But I think if you're talking later rounds, I think he absolutely has the potential for teams to take a risk on him in later rounds to potentially turn into something somewhat special. The basis is there.
Yeah, the thing about Chuba Hubbard for me is he was an absolute stud in 2019, and there's absolutely no denying that. He was touted as one of the best running backs in college football. But like you said, he decided to come back for 2020, and that actually hurt him, because one of the main differences that I saw in Chuba Hubbard was in 2020, he got complacent. He figured that nothing would change because he was so good in 2019. So I saw not the same intensity. I don't want to say a lack of effort because it's not like any one of these guys, quote unquote, try less, but the same intensity that made him so great in 2019 was just not there in 2020. Do I think that he could find it again? Absolutely. But the lack of effort showed really his downside, along like with his fumbling problem and his injury history. And that's what came back to hurt him. But I think about the 4th, 5th round, any team that decides to pick him up there would be getting pretty good value for him.
Yeah, absolutely. At that like 4th, 5th round, I think teams could definitely take that risk on him because he definitely had that draft stock plummet, but his upside, if you're able to turn him around. And one of the things when you have an off season like this, or a season where you were riding a high and you got knocked back a little bit, there's two ways you can go. You can either take it where it really hurts you mentally and you start doubting yourself and you kind of start a little slide, or you could come back with a bit of a chip on your shoulder. And I could see Chuba Hubbard coming into this his rookie season in the NFL with a bit of a chip on his shoulder. And if he gets the right opportunity where he can start trying to prove himself, I could see him absolutely putting in that work to make up for the ground that he's lost and starting to really improve on some of his areas of weakness.
100%. And yeah, that'll be it. We just went through a lot of the solid running backs in the NFL draft. We went through the big three: Harris, Etienne, Williams, and we even covered some of the guys who maybe won't be day 1, day 2 picks. But yeah, that'll do it. We have an NFL mock draft that we did. We went through the quarterbacks, and we're going to continue with this positional trend. We're going to cover wide receivers, cornerbacks, anything else you guys want us to cover. So leave a like, subscribe, drop a comment if you guys want to see anything specific. And until next time, we out.